All right, y'all. We had a big year this year. We kicked off the year by going back to basics with a live stream on defining reuse in EPR and DRS policy. EPR is extended producer responsibility, and DRS is deposit return systems, commonly known as bottle bills or recycling refunds. These definitions that we published in the beginning part of the year informed a lot of the rest of our year's work as we submitted comments and testimony on EPR and DRS legislation and rules. In total, we submitted 10 written testimony letters this year. 9 were at the state level, 1 was at the local level. And we also provided at least 15 sets of formal and informal comments to state regulatory agencies to inform the rulemaking process for newly enacted or updated EPR and DRS laws. So just a few of the state policy highlights from this year, really leaning in to support the passage of Minnesota's packaging EPR law, which became the 5th in the nation and the only one in the country to pass this year. And I'm really proud to say it has very strong reuse provisions. I'm also excited that we succeeded in updating Maine's food code to ensure returnable, reusable packaging is allowable for any businesses who want to use it. We dedicated a lot of time this year to both formal and informal rulemaking processes for new EPR laws, in addition to all of our written comments to state agencies. In Oregon, we served on the DEQ's Rulemaking Advisory Committee to inform the drafting of the program's rules. In California, we worked in coordination with dozens of other NGOs and businesses and other key stakeholders to digest and process and interpret CalRecycle's proposed rules and shape collective feedback. In Maine, we weighed in as Upstream on Maine's packaging EPR rules, but also guided the Reuse Maine Coalition's own comments. And in Colorado, we also provided comments directly to Circular Action Alliance, the packaging producer responsibility organization there, to inform their program plan, which is set to be published early in the new year, as well as their needs assessment. Also this year, we hired a lobbyist, which was a first for our team, to help us support the strongest possible reuse language in Washington State's EPR and DRS bills for 2025. And we also brought on our first policy team intern, so another big first for the year.
I am happy to say that I was the first policy intern of the Upstream team. I was fortunate enough to be given this opportunity to learn and grow in the reuse space for 7 months. In my time here, I widely distributed our reuse incentives and grants tracker to our reuse solution network, with over 1,200 people engaged in the reuse movement. With over 200 grant opportunities listed to help fund potential reuse projects across the US and Canada, we hope the tracker is a valuable resource for the movement. I also managed our reuse policy tracker that focuses on local, state and provincial, and national laws that mandate reuse or source reduction of waste in the US and Canada. To our knowledge, we are the only organization publicly tracking reuse policies. We hope to show how widespread reuse is and that the tracker remains a useful tool for advocates and policymakers to see what is out there. We currently have listed in our tracker 107 reuse laws in the US and Canada, which is a 34% increase from what we had recorded last year. These laws impact a population of 26%, which is a 30% increase from what we recorded in 2023. I also wrote a blog on how the current linear economy in the US and Canada depends on single use, and that it harms both people and the planet, especially marginalized communities exposed to pollution from extractive industries. Limiting extractive industries and eliminating single use are deeply interconnected, as any packaging solution, regardless of material, is going to have an impact. Luckily, reuse is a solution. By transitioning to reuse systems, we can reduce harm, create good green jobs, and support local economies, all while protecting the environment and creating a just system.
My favorite side project from this year was publishing our recycling versus reuse matrix, which breaks down in a fun way some of the parallels between the recycling and reuse systems and highlights many opportunities for overlap between these two, which is something I would love more understanding of in the EPR and DRS policy community. I'm also honored to say that we were appointed to the first materials management task force of Maine's Climate Council, which worked hard this year to update Maine's state-level climate action plan, which now includes support for reuse. It was great timing because Cerise is working on recommendations for how to incorporate reuse into climate plans, which we aim to publish next year.
This year, we hosted 16 Reuse Solution Network and subgroup meetings covering topics including reuse and its intersection with the just transition, how to message reuse to different audiences, and municipal foodware policy, implementation, and enforcement. Over 2024, we onboarded over 300 new representatives of reuse businesses, NGOs, local organizations, entrepreneurs, and governments to the Reuse Solutions Network, and now have over 1,200 people engaged in the reuse conversation, with more signing up every day. We published a major document created by the Reuse Solution Network's Grant Subcommittee that outlines best practices for government agencies interested in launching reuse-focused grant programs. The goal of this document is to encourage and grow the number of reuse-focused grant programs and to provide practical tips for developing a successful program. And with extended producer responsibility laws and bills growing, Sydney needs some assistance. And so this year, I began to learn from and work with key stakeholders for reuse in these programs. This year, I engaged directly in Circular Action Alliance's stakeholder surveys in Colorado and plan to continue to work in Colorado as well as Minnesota next year.
Early into 2024, we launched the Reuse for On-Site Dining Library. This was a collaborative effort featuring over 60 resources contributed by 16 NGOs across the reuse movement. The goal of the library is to be a one-stop shop for anyone looking to advance reuse in on-site settings, whether it be via policy or voluntary action. The library is designed to allow users to search by resource type and audience, such as by schools and businesses, policymakers, or advocates. We made a number of new materials for the library and also created a series of open source infographics which can be used by anyone for their own on-site dining advocacy efforts. So if you haven't yet, definitely check it out. We also launched this year 2 new subgroups of the Reuse Solutions Network that ran throughout 2024. The Conservative States and Provinces subgroup and the local deep dive subgroup. The former was tailor-made for folks living in more challenging policy environments. We highlighted a number of speakers from across the US promoting reuse in creative ways without policy and heard from advocates challenging preemption, or better known as ban on bans. The local deep dives subgroup was a space for anyone, whether it be local reuse coalitions, groups, or advocates, working to advance reuse at the local level. As one of the favorite topics for reuse advocates across the US and Canada, switching schools to reuse, we at Upstream dug into our own work on schools by partnering with Ahimsa, a stainless steel foodware company, in order to produce the Conscious Cafeteria Report. The report analyzes 15 elementary schools across the US that made the transition to Ahimsa trays, and in some instances, Ahimsa utensils. The report dives into the health rationale for shifting away from single use while providing projected environmental and economic benefits of making the transition to reusables. At Upstream, we continue to engage and provide support to reuse coalitions and groups across the US and Canada. For the first time ever, Upstream was able to launch a pass-through funding program for reuse coalitions and groups, and we're thrilled that we were able to provide funds to 13 different entities. Additionally, we continue to co-lead 3 coalitions where policy team staff are based, so the Austin Reuse Coalition, Reuse Maine, and the newly formed Reuse Phoenix. 2024 has certainly been an exciting year.